I'm Agent Morris with the NSA.
There is something real here.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General. Biologics came to some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Those could represent exquisite new adversary technology.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still in the program.
The government is covering up some level of its knowledge and understanding about what some of those things are.
The Sol Foundation, which just announced a new initiative for UFO research and policy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, we're just small-town buds who saw a UFO in the woods. I mean, now we're hanging out with the government.
Wow. What floor were you guys on?
Greetings, everybody. This is Smiles Lewis. Welcome to another edition of Anomaly Now, straight out of Austin, Texas. This is the weekly live news roundup show for the Scientific Anomaly Institute, aka Anomaly Archives. You can find out more about us at our website, anomalyarchives.org. And thank you for joining us, whether you're watching this live on our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, my personal LinkedIn page, or Twitter, X, whatever the heck it's called now, Twitch. And yes, we're back on Instagram again. Hope you're able to watch us either live or Memorex recording. Please do the usual smash, like, share, all that good stuff. We really do appreciate it. Every little bit helps. We all want to get word of this worthy nonprofit charitable organization, community-oriented nonprofit out to the world for those interested in strange phenomena, anomalies, UFOs, parapsychology, the anomalous nature of consciousness, and all the strange natural and supernatural, paranormal, esoteric, occult, weird phenomena that occurs that we document and archive and preserve here in Austin with the Anomaly Archives. Thank you. You can go to anomalyarchives.org. You can also reach out to us via snail mail if you prefer to write letters the old-fashioned way. You can send love letters, love offerings, as Jim Mosley of Saucer Smear used to say, to our P.O. Box. That's Austin. That's Anomaly Archives, P.O. Box 152252, Austin, Texas, zip code 78715. The P.O. Box is there on all the web pages at anomalyarchives.org, and we have a phone number where you can leave voicemail, 512-842-9046. And if you do leave a message, let us know if you are interested or willing to let us play that on the air. That, again, is area code 512-842-9046. That's our phone number. And, of course, if you'd like to communicate via email, you can reach us at contact@anomalyarchives.org. Well, thank you. This is going to be another interesting show. Haven't added that many things to the Flipboard this week, but you can find something there. If you can always dig back through those archives of thousands of articles and find what's of interest to you. Something I'm not going to go into deeply, other than to point your attention to this 404 Media article by Emmanuel Mayberg. Amazon sold fake copies of hotly anticipated UFO book. That's right. It's imminent. It's imminentizing the eschaton. Luis Elizondo, controversial figure, hero for the new disclosure age. You decide. Well, he's had a book template up on Amazon for some time called Imminent, and guess what? Somebody pulled a scare, and people have been falling for it. Apparently, there were books that seem to be AI generated, but use the cover with slightly different changes to it to get around, I guess, the legalities of it, but who knows? That's over at 404media.com, I believe is the URL. You can find that over at the Flipboard. But we've got some big news, actually, that before I get into any of this, I should just let you know. So the Anomaly Archives is about to launch a new monthly lecture series. We're going to be having monthly lectures by a variety of amazing and interesting people. We've already got bookings for the next 3 months. This month, starting June. Oh, by the way, it is Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. And later this month, we're going to have our first speaker. That's going to be Brent Raynes of Alternate Perceptions magazine. And of course, he's written the book on John Keel and has been at this for a very long time and has so many amazing anecdotes from his experience and history investigating these strange phenomena, the UFO phenomenon, and all the concomitant phenomena that come around it. And so he's going to be our speaker for June. And then in July, we're going to be having Professor WHAM give a presentation. And then in August, we'll be having Joshua Cutchin give a presentation. We've got a number of other people lined up after that. But basically, this is all going to be part of a new rollout where we're looking for monthly funding. If you just want to pay to see one of these speakers, that's fine for that month's event. But if you become a monthly contributor, you'll be able to see these presentations every month, plus any back catalog of presentations and new content that we'll be creating here at anomalyarchives.org. So back to the news for tonight. So yes, I recently got, After the Flying Saucers Came by Professor Greg Agigian. Yes, it's got green text, so the green screen is causing it to be transparent. Wait, can you see? No, you can't. So really I've been looking forward to this for so long, since I first learned of Professor Agigian, professor of history. Been really interested to see his take on this, providing an academic tome on the history of UFOs. Of course, the last professor of history to write a actually well-respected book on the history of UFOs was none other than David Jacobs, who didn't stick to just history and went off, some might say, the deep end, and believed all kinds of things and did all kinds of things. We'll just skip over that for right now. But Professor Greg Agigian, you can find out more about him at the Anomaly Archives website. Let's see if I can bring that up right there. This page for After the Flying Saucers Came, a global history of the UFO phenomena. It gives a brief synopsis there, as well as the table of contents. And then, of course, we have got a page for Mr. Agigian that has a lot of links to articles that he's either contributed to, written entirely himself, or been a part of, as well as a veritable panoply of UFO videos, or rather clips of him talking about the UFO phenomena. Now, you will not hear wild-eyed speculation from him. If you're looking for talk of disclosure or the latest and greatest speculations about this or that UFO sighting, that's not his thing. He is a professor trying to do a deep dive into the historic phenomenon of UFOs and more importantly, their place in history and how people have perceived them through that history as a function of the times they were living through. So if he has any context about, say, David Grush, I'm sure it will be informed by all the other things that we are living through right now. So yes, you can find those links over on the anomalyarchives.org website. Some great stuff when I was digging into finding all the clips I'd come across over the last few years. Put the links there so you don't have to do the digging. There's, of course, so many more I'm probably missing, but there you go. And this just came in over the wire. Our friend Tim Banal reporting over at coasttocoastam.com. Argentine politician reveals UFO encounter. This is on June 4th. Tim writes, an Argentine politician raised eyebrows in his country when he revealed a vivid UFO encounter that he experienced years ago. Deputy Mayor for the city of Cordoba, Javier Preto, reportedly shared the remarkable account during a recent television interview. And in fact, you can see that interview. There is a link to the 5-minute, 40-second YouTube video. I guess it was a soccer program in which the one of the hosts, I guess, knowingly asked, "Do you believe in aliens?" And proceeded to give an account of his own experience. And this has been written up in the website chronica.com.ar. And then this, I thought I already translated this to English, but it did not translate. Oh, well. Well, you can go there with the appropriate browser and have it translated to English and read it. But basically, over at Coast to Coast AM, Tim gives a pretty good synopsis of it. Apparently, this gentleman was taken with a monk and a group of people, I think about 5 people, up into the mountains several years ago, and Mount Uritorco on a mission of sorts, quote, to go see these special beings. As the group stood on a sizable stone, he said, a light resembling a white oval suddenly appeared before them. It was soon joined by 4 additional illuminations, which formed a cluster resembling 5 rings. Preto and his friends, he recalled, stood in awe as the illuminations hovered before them, before ultimately disappearing after about 15 minutes. 15-minute UFO sighting with multiple witnesses, multiple objects. Don't know if he reported this to anybody or whether it was actually investigated by quote-unquote ufologists, but interesting nonetheless. That goes on to say, upon returning to their hotel following the astounding experience, he said the monk indicated that the eerie aerial anomalies were an evolved race of peaceful special beings. The event was so transformative for Preto, he told the program's host that he later took his son to a different mountain in the hope of meeting these entities again, and on this occasion, they witnessed, quote, an extraterrestrial city by way of a portal that provided a glimpse of an apocryphal underground community known as ERKS, E-R-K-S. In what may be a sign of the ufological times, Preto's fantastic account comes on the heels of a similarly vivid tale shared last month by Chilean Senator Karim Bianchi, who claimed that he was once abducted by aliens and then visited by an ET. And of course, there's a link to that previous story there. I was just having a conversation last night with a good friend and fellow UFO seeker, and we were discussing just how amazingly diverse and prevalent in South and Central America belief and interest in the paranormal and UFOs is, and how there have been, he was just describing how there are tons of these accounts of folks going into the mountains and encountering beings on a regular basis. And I recall from decades ago, a friend who was here working for Motorola from Brazil, who told me a very similar description of his country folk, that there was a real belief in these things, that it wasn't considered anything extraordinary. And of course, we have these places where there's these volcanoes that are often seen objects going in and out of, and the folk belief is that there's a underground base there, some kind of alien base underneath. Who knows? But always interesting to see when politicians come out on this. In so many cases in the United States, of course, that ends up being a great way to ridicule them and for their opponents to laugh at them and get people to dismiss them for being cranks. But we know better, don't we? Yeah, so there's this video over at YouTube, and it's all in Spanish, so there may be a way, I guess there's a way to translate the transcription there on YouTube, but moving right along, there's the biggest thing I want to draw your attention to is this article over at Eric Wargo's Medium.com blog, Art and the Precognitive Imagination. Anybody who's followed the Anomaly Archives knows about Eric Wargo as the researcher into time loops and precognition. He's been investigating precognitive dreams and visions for quite some time, and he's got a new book coming out. But in this blog entry, do artworks that foretell the future provide a clue about the nature of creativity? Now, spoiler alert, the basic premise of his research into precognition is specifically this idea that what people are precognizing is not necessarily like some kind of clairvoyant anomalous cognition of, or like a remote viewing of things that are happening in the future, so much as retrocausal effects whereby through dreams, visions, intuitions, they are picking up on the echoes from the future into that future's past, our now, and affecting us in such a way as to have these visions, these experiences, these intuitions, these mind's eye visions that inform what's going to happen. And so they often, in some cases, can seemingly be false information, but information that is actually in the person's future. This lengthy article goes into a number of different examples. He talks about this artist, Michael Rolando Richards, and says, in the years preceding the millennium, Richards created an impressive body of work using motifs of airplanes crashing and colliding and people falling from the sky. His works express frustrations he experienced as a struggling black artist in a white-dominated New York art world. His most famous work is a 1999 sculptural self-portrait called Tar Baby versus Saint Sebastian. And there's a picture below that I'll show you. His gold bronze body in the flight suit of a Tuskegee airman stands erect and levitates off the ground, and his torso is impaled by numerous airplanes. It's a striking sculpture, even if you don't know that the artist was killed in his studio on the 92nd floor of Tower 1 on September 11th, literally martyred by planes along with 2,800 other people beginning their workday in the World Trade Center. There is that powerful work there. And he goes on to give examples of the filmmaker that the Russian that did the movie Stalker, that seemed to precognize the Chernobyl disaster, as well as the director and one of his actors' deaths. You can read more about that there. And there's a number of other examples. Of course, he talks about Philip K. Dick. Most examples of this sort of thing come from writers, thanks to their tendency to leave a dense paper trail of their lives along with their works. Philip K. Dick wrote several stories and novels that anticipated near-future cultural memes, singular turning points in his own life, or just articles on esoteric topics he was soon to read in magazines. And there, again, is that idea that he was somehow pulling from his near future these things that he would come into contact with. Continuing, for instance, in 1962, he wrote a novel about engineering entrepreneurs building a robot, Abraham Lincoln. No publisher was interested, but 2 years later, Disney unveiled with much fanfare their animatronic Abraham Lincoln. There's a number of other examples. Of course, this one is always one I point out to folks. Quote, the most well-known example of alleged literary prophecy is Morgan Robertson's 1898 novel, Futility, about the biggest ocean liner ever, the Titan, which collides with an iceberg on an April night in the North Atlantic, most passengers perishing because of too few lifeboats. The nearly identical Titanic met a nearly identical fate on an April night 14 years later. But disaster premonitions in novels are famously common. And he goes on to give reference to the thing that we've talked about, the novel White Noise, recently adapted into a made-for-Netflix type movie about an airborne toxic event. And it mentions how it was published in 1985, just a month before its publication. An accident at a Union Carbide plant in Bhopal, India, released a toxic cloud that killed 8,000 people. Still the biggest industrial accident ever, bigger even than Chernobyl, though I think there may be considered to be a lot more long-lasting deaths associated with Chernobyl than that, perhaps. I don't know. It is maybe easier to ignore or dismiss these kinds of seeming coincidences when they come from low-status sci-fi or even postmodern literary playfulness, but what about when it happens to the canonical authors, the greats? So he goes on to give some examples of some of the more famous authors who he thinks fit this description of having these precognized incidents that made their way into their works. And he talks about a book by Adam Moss, The Work of Art, a thick and beautifully produced compendium of interviews with artists about their creative process, and plays on the whole idea of 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration, the Thomas Edison famous quote. But he's, again, trying to push this idea that it is, in fact, more often this intuitive aspect, this transtemporal precognizing that is often at the heart of these more powerful works that exhibit these synchronicities. There's a lot of other good examples, and I encourage you to go over to his blog there at medium.com. And of course, he cites the works of Jeff Kripal, trying to make the impossible possible, and gives some more interesting examples, including this one from Kevin Archer, linking to the blog, kevinarcher.art, to give another example. And in that one, too, it seems clear in that example that this person was seemingly precognizing something that they would learn later in life, but then that turned out to not exactly be true. So they were precognizing the false information. Buyer beware. Well, he, of course, tries to ground it in some of the science, not going into the details, but just to say that, as I often struggle to tell folks, that there is just such a wealth of parapsychological scientific research that, to my mind, and to the minds of those performing that research, indicates that this is a real phenomena, that there may be real physics behind this, and we may be getting closer and closer to understanding this. And giving those brief synopses, he says, quote, "A growing number of physicists think that what the field has been mistakenly thinking of as randomness is really causes propagating backward in time, future to past. The unpredictable part of an electron's behavior has to do with the next thing the electron will interact with. Another way of putting it is that the physicist's measurement of the electron is actually causing some of the particle's prior behavior." H.U.W. Price at Cambridge and Ken Wharton at San Jose State University argue that retrocausation provides an elegant and simple solution to many other quantum mysteries, such as entanglement. It gives us headaches, even many physicists, to think in these terms, but we're just going to need a bigger bottle of aspirin. And he gives some other examples, including Hameroff is working with Nobel laureate physicist Roger Penrose on a solution to consciousness that involves microtubules. He also playfully talks about the idea of quantum computers and references my favorite science fiction writer, still living, William Gibson, and his novel The Peripheral, which was made into another Netflix type streaming series, which unfortunately did not get renewed. But very interesting idea whereby people in the future are communicating to people in our present, their past. Again, check it out. Highly recommend this. Meanwhile, just some quick other headlines. Oh, yes. China probe successfully lands on the dark side of the moon. Yep. Can it be believed? Can we believe Chinese state television? China's Chang'e 6 lunar probe successfully landed Sunday on the far side of the moon to collect samples, state media reported. The latest leap for Beijing's decades-old space program. Chang'e 6 set down in the immense South Pole Aitken Basin, one of the largest known impact craters in the solar system. State news agency Xinhua, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, said, citing the China National Space Administration. Yeah, there's several phrasings in this article that it just keeps relying on the state media of China are reporting this. I imagine there's got to be some people watching who can verify this, except once it gets out of range of the side of the moons that we can see. Anyway, material collected from the dark side may better shed light on how the moon formed in the first place. And they just go on to say that this is obviously a big deal as far as China being one of the only countries in the world that has such an active space program as us. And there you go. Meanwhile, one last thing. We've reported on out-of-place kangaroos and other animals as a Fortean phenomena. Well, Houston Chronicle, Chron.com reports kangaroo evades Texas cops after daring escape in viral video. And there's this great dash cam footage of the kangaroo eluding the police. The kangaroo was returned to its owners. Yes, no surprise. It was just an escaped kangaroo. Not that strange, obviously. The headline for the browser window is humorously titled, "Is this kangaroo the most wanted fugitive in Texas?" Somehow, I think not. I think there's a lot more dangerous fugitives in this country. This country that is Texas. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up. I'm keeping this short tonight, folks. Really appreciate you tuning in or listening to the podcast after the fact. And of course, you can go to our Spreaker.com podcast page if you want to subscribe to the audio only version. I'd usually tweak those and edit them a little to make them quicker and better sounding. Or you can listen on your favorite podcatchers, Spotify, etc. Or you can watch the replay over at our YouTube channel, or, well, I guess Twitch doesn't carry the replay, but the Facebook page and all that stuff. Again, we could really use your help. You can make tax-deductible donations. You can send them to the P.O. Box address that's on the website, and you can support us in that way, or just, again, share information and get the word out about us. And like I said, starting this month, we are now starting a monthly lecture series, and that's going to start with Brent Raynes at the end of this month, June, 2024 with Professor WHAM presenting in July next month. And then after that, Joshua Cutchin will be presenting, and we just got a host of other people lining up for that. Thank you for watching. We'll see you around. Good night.